It's recording. Nice. All right, let's see. Who's here? Jonah, you already said good morning. Alex, how are you? Can you hear me, Alex?
Very good.
Good. Katie, how are you?
Great.
Good. Sarah, how's it going?
I'm good.
Good. I see Lindy. Lindy, what's up? I see one person, BKOV. Is that Brian? I don't see a face. I just see a black box.
Darkness.
Yes.
There he is.
Yes, it is Brian. All right. How's it going? Good. Okay, so we have a pretty light week on Hebrew, just a couple, I think just 2 or 3 lessons. So we're going to work our way through those. Going to do just a little bit of review first from last week, but I'd like to just start by seeing what questions you have, if any. So any questions left over from last week?
I had a question about the quiz. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this now, but the quiz that you showed us was the reading, right? Reading 1, it's like the picture of the farm animals or whatever.
That's right.
So with that, it's just like we need to learn 5 things and you point to it.
Yeah, so I'm going to put the picture of the quiz. Let's see here. Well, let me just show you the quiz and we'll talk about it. Where did I put it? I'm always losing my stuff. That's not it. Quiz. That's quiz number 1. I want quiz number 2. Okay. Let me share my screen. Sure. All right. So this is the exact quiz that you're going to see. So you'll write what you hear, just like we did last time. I'll say a phrase, you'll write it down. I'll put up these words or vocab words that we've been working on. Write the Hebrew for the 4 items indicated. This is a little preemptive, but I'm just encouraging us to get ahead. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about reading 1 if you haven't gotten there. But we need to figure out what these different items are, and there are 4 of them. Some of these we already had as vocab. Some of them are going to be new. So let's see here. Do we know what the word for boy is? Anybody?
Nar.
Na'ar is a young lad. So that's good. There's 3 different categories of age in Hebrew. We have the ish, we have the na'ar, which is a young lad, and then we have the yeled, which is a young
boy.
child.
Okay.
So the normal distinction is like from 0 up to about 5 is a yeled, and that's a young, that's a child, what we normally would call a child. And then we have a kid, which is na'ar. We might translate that as kid. And that is a person from like 6 up to 12. And then once you're 13 or older, then you're an ish or isha. So we have na'ar and na'ara. So these ones, it's kind of hard to tell how old they are. So you could write either, you could write yeled or yeleda, or you could write na'ar or na'ara. It just depends on how old you think these pictures are. It's kind of up to you. What is this building called here?
Barit.
Bayit. Very good.
Bayit. I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get to the Hebrew, so I'm pronouncing it right and learning it. So,
Yeah.
And that's like one thing on that Quizlet. They have, like, I think it was only lesson 5 or something, but on the what we're doing this week, it was so difficult to even write them out when they tried to have you write the Hebrew.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had the different, I couldn't even figure out how to do the parentheses right.
Yeah, it's a little
I mean,
complicated.
so that was, I don't know, are we supposed to do the Quizlet? I mean, is that required for our grades to get the Quizlet done? Like
No, the only thing that's required from Quizlet is the vocabulary test.
Okay, so that would be reading test or no, vocabulary?
That'd be
I've done that.
let's take a look at that.
Okay. That would be a good idea.
Quizlet. That is not spelled right. Gonna get your faces out of my way so I can log in. What is my username? I don't know. Let's see if I did that right. I did not. My web browser crashed, so now I don't have any of my information. Also,
Okay.
so I have to do it myself now. We'll try to log in through Google. That worked. Okay, let's see. So there's going to be 2 vocabularies. Well, for this week, first off, we should look at the syllabus. Where do we keep the syllabus? We hide it down here for some reason. The quiz will be based off of all the things that you have to do. What is this, week 3? So we need to do lessons 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Okay.
So that's what vocabulary tests you need to complete. So there's 5 separate ones that you need to be doing: 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So if we go to our sets, we just find those. Let's see here. They're all.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I couldn't even write the deal. I couldn't even get. The way they're doing it is so hard.
Okay.
I'd spend hours just trying to figure out how to do that. So
that's not good. Feel free to.
I mean, maybe I'm taking the wrong test, so I need to set it up better.
Well, so I think that.
Okay, like that.
So if we go to our options, let's see here.
So where it's written, I have a really hard time. So not do written.
You do not want
the written one. I could not pass.
Written should not be checked. You're not going to pass written.
The rest I could do. Okay.
We're doing our own written stuff in class, so we're not doing that. Matching, multiple choice, true, false. These are the ones. 15 or less. There are only a possible 9 questions in this lesson, anyways. So 9 is the most that you can do. So then you create it, and then this you can do, right? Who, he, shalom, P.
Yeah, I think I can do that. Okay. And then how did you get to that? I'm sorry again.
So in Quizlet.
Like, how do I set that up? Make sure I'm doing it right. Doing that, get the thing, but I want to set it up so that the test is the right test.
Yeah, so I'm just going through everything here.
Okay.
So it has to be Cook Homestead, right, for your tests. You have to do Cook Homestead. Jacobs does not work for this. Click on test. Then click on options.
Okay, and then do it there. Okay, so just go to options. Okay.
Yeah, so it should look just like this. Start with English. 9 create.
Okay.
We'll do it. And it should be different every time.
Okay.
Okay.
Just getting through Quizlet is enough right now. Okay, so anyway.
Yeah, we're still trying to learn how to navigate.
I know. It's like so frustrating because I'm like so challenged, but okay. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Alrighty, let's see, what else do we need to talk about? Hebrew. There's one part of our lesson from last week that I want to review. Present both of my textbooks in my car for some reason. I'll have to do it from memory. I think of the 5 lessons that we covered last week, one of them was particularly challenging. The other 3 just take some memorization, but aren't that difficult, I don't think, although you may have experienced it differently. I think the most
Well, I think it gets confusing when you try to do it. So,
say that again.
I mean, I think it's more challenging. Well, I think it's more challenging than when you're really doing it. I mean, it may not be challenging for you, but in terms of really understanding, I wouldn't mind going through all of those lessons real quick, unless you want to get right to the next thing that we're going to talk about tomorrow.
But I just wanted to spend more time.
Even if you go through quickly.
That we're going to cover tomorrow, but I don't mind covering whatever you all want to talk about. That's why we're here. So we spend maybe half this time reviewing whatever is helpful for you, and then the other half introducing the new material. And we only have 2 new lessons and then talking a little bit about the reading, but we'll do most of the reading in class. I got to open my door because my internet is slow and my door slows it down for some reason. See if I can let the waves come into the computer. There we go. See? It's magic. Let's see here. All right, so we talked about the singular subject pronouns, who, he, ata, ata, ni. Those ones we need to memorize, and then they just act as the subject of the sentence. So he is, she is, you are, I am, whatever. Complete the sentence however you want, but that's how they function within it. So they can't be the object. They can't be an indirect object. They can only function as the subject in a sentence. So he, who, ata, at, ani. Of course, we talked about these as being tricky because they sound like the opposite of what they actually are, especially he, right? He is she. Then who is he? What? How is that even possible? Right? But they just kind of become second nature, and especially when you look at them, it's a lot easier when you look at them. When we hear them, our brains go a little sideways sometimes. But were there any questions about the pronouns? All right. Yeah,
now, is there anything about past tense on those singular? Sorry, now that I'm looking at, would there ever be like you were?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so we're going to learn a lot more about verbs later, but I'll say this several times before we get there. Hebrew verbs do not carry time. So Hebrew does not have time in its verb. We always in English have past tense or future tense or present tense or whatever our tense is. Hebrew verbs do not have tense at all. So when I say he is, it could be he will be. It's all based on context and other words that Hebrew uses to tell us what time we're talking about. So these subject pronouns can be used in any sentence with any time period that is being talked about.
Okay, so if you were saying, what's your baby's name? You could say, he, Rachel.
Correct, yeah.
And then they would mean that will be maybe, because it would be the context. There wouldn't be, or you'll add on something later.
Yeah. So if you said he, Rachel, that could be she will be named Rachel, right? If the baby is born, or she was Rachel, she is Rachel. You just don't know except for based on context. And the context will tell you almost all the time. There's very little ambiguity because the language knows that it has to supply some time. It just doesn't happen to do it with verbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're good there.
Yeah. So that's a whole different
got that one
that we don't really need to worry about too much right now. This, when we were talking about it, when I looked at your faces when we were talking about this, looked like the most challenging part, the copular clauses. So this was the one of the 5 that I thought was the most difficult because it's so different than English. I think it's one of the reasons why it's so challenging. But a copular clause is a clause or a sentence that has the phrase to be or will be or am, any of these to be verbs in any of the tenses. Hebrew handles those sentences in several different ways. English just says to be. We have a copular verb that we use all the time. We have the verb to be. Hebrew has a word that is to be, but that's not the only way to form these clauses or sentences. The simplest way is just to simply omit it altogether. Forget the verb. Who needs a verb? Hebrew doesn't need it. Let's just make sentences without it. And that's why we can say so much already in Hebrew without actually knowing any verbs. We haven't studied any verbs yet we can still form sentences. I take that the only verb we have studied is haya, right? So we can use this to say the same thing. It's saying exactly the same thing, just in 2 different ways. But wait, there's a third way. We can throw in the third person singular suffix in order to say is or to be or am. Just in the place of haya, wherever you would put to be in English, you could put the third person singular suffix. And it would function syntactically, grammatically as a verb. So this is the kind of the weirdest or strangest for us way to form a sentence, is by putting in the who, right? You put who in there and you form a sentence. It's kind of odd, but that's how Hebrew does it. We're going to learn another one next week, but for now, these are the three that we're working with. Did you have any questions about these sentences, the way that we form these sentences?
So again, when I was filling out, just like on bait, you would always have that present tense, or does it matter? Could I make it up so it could be he was a young man or he is a young man?
Yeah, I need to run out to my car probably to get my textbook, but can you read bait to me in Hebrew, or hold it up to your screen and let me see it?
Yeah. Okay. So it's just using that iya or aya.
Okay. Hiya
verb.
Yes.
So if it's like, so when I translate it, so I don't know, like see on this part when I'm translating those, but I just always say it always just use it present in this context just to get myself clear.
You pick whichever one.
It doesn't matter. So they're still right. It's just,
yep.
Okay. It's basically just getting the idea. Okay.
Yep. All three of these can be past, present, or future.
Okay.
Well, the hayya is a verb. And again, so verbs in Hebrew don't carry time. So you have to pick. And if you don't have any context, then it doesn't matter. You pick whatever you want. And those little exercises, you have zero context to decide. So just pick whichever one is simplest. So probably present tense or past tense is the simplest. So it doesn't matter. It's a good question.
Now, I have a question about the verbal copular. Does word order come into play at all there? Like, are we always going to find that at a certain place in the sentence?
Yeah, great question. So word order in Hebrew is somewhere between English and Greek. So Greek word order is all over the place, very expressive and based on what the author is trying to do and say. The verb can be at the end or the beginning or in the middle. It doesn't matter. Hebrew is a little more set than that, but it's variable. Normally, we have subject, verb, object. That's the most basic way a Hebrew sentence is formed. A lot of things can cause a Hebrew sentence to turn into verb, subject, object, and we'll talk more about that in a different lesson. So for now, you're just going to see subject, verb, object. It doesn't change the meaning of the sentence if those are switched around. But certain things will make them switch. Certain grammatical words will make them switch, and other grammatical features. But for now, it's subject, verb, object.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, the most common is verb, subject, object, even though subject, verb, object is the proper, most basic way to do it. So, yeah, good question. All right. We talked about nouns singular. We're going to get into the plural nouns today, but sus and susaw, we just add the on to the end to make a noun feminine. So we got a male horse, then a female horse. So that was pretty straightforward. Sometimes a tav is thrown in instead of a hey. That's just irregular. We have irregular nouns. And other ways they can be irregular. So you can have a feminine noun that looks masculine without any ending at all, and it is just feminine. So like the word yod, hand, is feminine grammatically, but there's no marker telling us that. You just have to know that. Just like fish is plural grammatically sometimes, and it's singular sometimes. You just have to know that about English. So languages have these irregularities that we just have to get used to. Are there any questions about the singular nouns? Simple enough. All right, and then we just kind of pile together three different elements. So we have the definite article, the hey attached to the front, the patak that got out there, and a dagesh. The interrogative hey, the hey, but with this chataf patak. The only difference between these two is the different vowel, and there's no dagesh for the interrogative hey. Both of these are just put right on the front of a word, and it changes the meaning of what's going on in that sentence. So this one makes the word definite, adds the word the, and this one just makes the sentence into a question. When we talked about possessive lamed, where does the lamed go when you try to form a sentence? Where does it end up?
Before the object? No, before the subject.
So it goes before. Does it stand by itself or does it get attached to a word?
It gets attached to the
Attached to the possessor, right?
That's
to
right.
the
Whatever.
subject.
Yeah. So
Right.
to ish, to the man, to ha ish, sus. So to the man is a horse. Exactly. So the lamed gets attached to the possessor, and it lets us know that to that noun is another noun, and you got to go looking for what it owns. So when you see a lamed, most of the time it's going to be a possessive lamed telling you that this entity owns something else.
And that lamed is never has any vowel or punctuation or.
I wouldn't say never. I'd say most of the time. Most of the time it has a shava underneath it, right?
The shava, the two dots.
Yep.
That's the two dot, yeah.
Most of the time. There are quite a few circumstances that would make that not true. But for now, the standard way is to put the two dots underneath it. We'll talk a lot more about these kind of rare cases later. It's the majority case that we need to understand now. We kind of ignore the exceptions until they come up, until we have to worry about them. So for now, we'll stick with that. Okay, so this was the end of last week, essentially. Any questions about these grammatical pieces?
I had a question with just all the vocab. I noticed that I can see it and I can say it and I can do that. But when I try to go the other way and I'm trying to write it, I'm trying to think, how do I write this? I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
Is there any, I can do some of it, but I can't do all the vowel placement usually is what I'm getting mixed up on. Is there any suggestion how to do that better?
Yeah, well, so as far as the vowels go, that takes a lot of time. How to spell correctly in any language is very challenging. This is why we see first graders writing sentences that we can understand that are just completely spelled wrong. But normally we don't really care because we're just happy that this kid is writing a sentence and it's really cool. Who cares if there's an E instead of an A? And that's, I think, what I want your attitude to be in Hebrew is if you can come up with the consonants, it doesn't really matter which vowels you put in there right now because the adults, so to speak, will understand what you're trying to say. And at times when we're teaching kids, we normally won't correct our younger kids until much later. So I'm not going to be correcting you until much later when I think you finally should have to figure this out. So you should just be happy that you can produce any form of that word at this point in the game.
Okay, that's helpful.
Cool.
Is there any rule in terms of sometimes the hardest ones for me are those that kind of have more of a vowel sound in the beginning? So it starts with an aleph versus a yod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is there any key to kind of remembering that, or I like in yaled, and then how you pronounce that, or
Yeah. So one key that we'll talk about in a different lesson, but we can talk about now as well, is that most Hebrew words have 3 consonants. There's exceptions to this, but maybe 80-90% of all Hebrew words have 3 and only 3 consonants in them. So if you are trying to spell out the word and it starts with a vowel sound and you have 2 other consonants after it, you know that you have to put in an aleph or an ayin. One of those is kind of that placeholder at the beginning because Hebrew words always start with a consonant. There are no Hebrew words that start with vowels. So in English, of course, we have words that start with vowels, but Hebrew doesn't do that. So if it sounds like it starts with a vowel sound, then you know it starts with a consonant, one of the silent consonants. Which one it starts with is a game that you're going to struggle with as long as you mess around with Hebrew, because that's just it's a memorization process. So,
and the same with that ch sound too. I'm finding when I look at that, sometimes that's hard to remember in terms of the hek or the
het or the kaf without the dagesh. Yeah, so and it's just
it's without the dagesh.
Isn't really well. So the kaf without the dagesh is spelled with this. It's with the ch sound, like ch, as in bach. Same as a het. It's very similar sound.
Yeah.
So there's really no tricks except for memorizing how to spell the word. And again, this is why from like 4th grade all the way up to 8th grade or whatever, we have vocabulary and spelling tests in school. We're not gonna have spelling tests in Hebrew class. As long as you write down something that looks similar to what it's supposed to be, that's all that really matters at this point. Because we're just little children in this class. We're not expected to know how to spell complex words yet. So practice and experience and time will help with that. But for now, don't worry about it. If you spell it with a cough instead of a chet, it doesn't matter. We get what you're trying to write.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, that was the end of that lesson. Let's go ahead and take a look at week 4 here. Come on, Prezi. Thinking. The wheel of death, too. Give me a break. Almost there.
So another question about the Quizlet, just in terms of trying to get it in your head, they'd have like they just have the regular consonants, and then they'd have with the vowels, and then they'd have plural, right?
That's correct.
The 3 things. Is that kind of how they memorize that? I mean, as a child, that's how you're learning. They want us to understand there's a root, or just recognize that because you might not always have the punctuation. Is that why they do that?
Yeah, there's a few reasons why they would put them side by side. But one of the main reasons is sometimes the plural word is spelled different than the singular word.
Yeah.
So you would have to memorize that. And there are some rules that govern changes in spelling, but in general, it's a memorization process. So we want you to see the plural there so you recognize both the singular and the plural. Because there are enough changes that make them different. So the vowels will change. The consonants very rarely will change. But since the vowels are changing, we want you to see both of them side by side so you get used to seeing the differences.
And then why do they put it there without any punctuation at all? Like any vowels? They just give you the consonant? Is that just because you might see it written that way and you're supposed to start to recognize that? Or
in Quizlet, there are no vowels? Well, I took
thought they show it, like say they say was, they'll show you with no vowels, with the vowel, and then plural, typically, or not.
Okay, well, so yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's on there, but maybe without the vowels, it's just the root consonants, and with the vowels,
like a root.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why they would be doing that in Quizlet. Maybe something.
Well, is that like the beginning as a dictionary, just give you the root though, so you'd look it up with just the root? Is that what?
Yeah, possibly. Except for when you're using your lexicon, we have a whole lesson on the lexicon later. But when you're using the lexicon, you're going to check up the most basic grammatical form, which for nouns is the 3rd masculine singular form. So you'll check it up with the vowels. And the verbs is the 3rd masculine singular verbal form that you check up as well. So you're not going to check up just the root letters, the consonants, because the vowels are actually important. You can have the same root letters and different vowels and have a whole different word. So they're important. All right. This is not the right lesson. I need to go run out and get my book. I'll be right back. Sorry. All right. So we're doing just lesson 10 and 11. Plural nouns and plural subject pronouns. And this week's Prezi was or something else. I might need to make a whole new presentation. I thought I already had it made up. Let's see if week 5 covers this one. So let's just go to page 41 if you got your textbook and check out page 41 real quick. So at the top of page 41, we see the whole chart for singular, plural, and what we call dual nouns. So the singular, we add the comets and the hey to make a noun feminine. What do we add to make a noun plural and masculine?
Im.
We add im, right? You see that the Hirik yod and the mem, im. So this is pronounced su-seem, su-seem. What do we add to make a noun plural feminine, feminine plural?
Eat.
Oat.
Oat. Oh, oat. Yeah, I always get. Ugh.
Good. So we're adding different things onto nouns to make them grammatically different. So we have things to add for singular, and we have things to add for plural. So sus, susa, susim, susot. Sus, susa, susim, susot. This is something that we should, kind of have rattling around in our head. The dual form, we add something that looks similar to the masculine plural form. We have a patak, a yod, a hirik, and a mem. So ayim. So this would be susayim. And this would be if there were two horses. So Hebrew has three different categories. Singular, so for one animal, one rock, one whatever. And then we have plural for many things, and we have dual if there are only two. So it's one, two, or more than two. These are our three categories. The dual is almost always used and only normally used when the item normally comes in a set. So we have down at the bottom of page 41 examples. It's like we have 2 hands and 2 ears and 2 feet and 2 eyes and 2 sandals, right? 2 shoes. So these things are the things we will use the dual for. Normally, we wouldn't use it if you saw 2 horses. You're not really going to see susayim. Normally, that would just be the plural, even though there's only 2 of them. Since they come in multiples, they come in 2s, 3s, and 4s, whatever, we'll use the plural. But if it normally appears as a set, then we'll use the dual. So for 2 eyes, 2 hands, we got yad and yadayim for hands. 1 hand yad, 2 hands yadayim. Normally, you're not going to see yad in the plural, yadayim. That would be kind of an odd sentence.
Unless you're talking about a group of hands, everybody's hands in the class.
Yeah, look
right?
at all those hands.
Like wash your hands
pile,
to the
right?
class. If you said wash your hands to the class, you would
Exactly. Then you could use it. So that'd be the dual would be the more common, the plural would be the more rare when we have these objects that come in these sets. So I'm still trying to find the present. It probably doesn't matter at this point because you all can see. So any questions on the plural and the dual nouns?
So do they get specific, like in this book, they show fathers, women, men. Is that to say when they only show you the singular and plural, when you're talking about 2 or more, you just use the plural, or would you actually use that dual conjugation for 2 women or 2 fathers?
Yeah, so we would use the plural for, let's just say there happen to be 2 dads sitting next to each other
Right.
talking, and we wanted to say something about them. We would use the plural to reference them because normally, or we see fathers in groups of many. They don't fall into this category of normally coming in pairs. Right?
Okay. So just the horses seem to be in pairs because that would be a trade thing or something.
Well, the horses
right?
example is just an example. Normally, the horses would be in the plural as well.
Oh, okay.
Even if we only saw 2 of them. So it's
kind of explaining why you talk about hands in this way or ears or
exactly.
Is that right?
So you'll see down the last paragraph on 41, the use of the dual is largely confined to things that occur naturally in pairs. So if something doesn't normally occur naturally in pairs, even if we see 2 of them, we're going to use the plural to talk.
Okay.
Right.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be counting everything. I see. Okay.
Yeah. So just stick with the plural unless you're talking about, eyes, hands, feet, that sort of stuff. Right.
So, and then the only other question I have on that, on page 42, where they say this gray type is, they say we have the gray type to distinguish between normal vocabulary words.
Yeah.
So we need to look that word up, I would assume, right? And do we look it up with that aleph sound and look under there and find it?
Yeah, good question. So let's try to pronounce that the first. So you're looking on page 42 underneath Aleph, and then Aleph. So read that sentence to me in Hebrew.
Yad la av ram.
Avram. Good. All right. So I wonder if Avram, if I said Avraham, you might recognize it more readily than Avram. Anybody know what this word is?
Abram.
Yeah.
Oh, Abraham.
Abraham. That's Abram. Abram is his short name, his original name, right?
Okay.
So whenever you see a word in the light gray, that means it is a proper name.
Oh, so that just means it's a proper name.
Yeah.
Oh.
They do this just simply to help us at this point.
So we're not trying to think Aram is something. Okay.
Yeah, if you check that word up in the dictionary, you'll find it as Abraham's name, but you're also going to find the meaning of Av. Anybody remember Av? It's a vocab word?
Father,
right? So a lot of Hebrew names are based off of actual words, and it gets really complicated when we start trying to break this word down, and then our sentence gets all crazy because we're translating the name instead of just having it as a proper noun. So for now, they'll be in gray to simplify this process. It's a lot easier at this point like that. So we got Yosef. Who's Yosef? In Beit.
or Joseph,
And then Yisrael.
Israel.
Israel wrestled with God. Right, all these names. You might remember the stories that come from these names, right? Then we got down in Beit Yaakov.
Okay, where are you now?
In Beit, down in the last.
Yaakov, yeah.
Yaakov, Jacob.
Okay. Wait.
The last one there in Hay, Paro. Who's Paro?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh here, yeah, Pharaoh. So that's how you'd say Pharaoh in Hebrew, Pharaoh. So anyways, that's why they're gray.
Okay. The other question I have about this Isha, like the woman.
Yep.
What is the punctuation within the Shah that has the dot?
Yeah.
Is that just an emphasis, like instead of having the aleph or whatever it's called on the top? Sorry.
So that is a strong dogish, a dogish chazak.
A dogish, okay.
And this is some words are spelled with dogishes, and this word is spelled with a dogish there all the time. So this is pronounced ish, shah. We pronounce the shin twice. Ish, shah.
So that's what that's telling me. It's Isha. Okay, so then is that, in some places I've seen two dogishes in between each of the W, and sometimes one.
Within one shin, you saw two dots?
Yeah.
Well, that would be spelled incorrectly. You can only have one dot per word or per letter.
Okay.
Yeah. So one word can have multiple dogishes, but one letter can only have one dogish at a time. If you had, like on the top, you can have two dots, one on the right and one on the left. One's a vowel and one is the marker of the shin or the sin. But that'd be at the top, not in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's talk about lesson 11 quickly here. So these are subject pronouns. They're just the plural forms. We already did the who, he, ata, at, and ani. So on page 44. Now we get to add in the plural forms. Haim, hen, atem, aten, anachnu. Anachnu. All right. So we can see some patterns here. What are the similarities between the singular, the third masculine singular, and third masculine plural? What is something that is similar between those two? The who and the hen, or haim. Who and haim. So they both, what? Who and
Start with hey.
They both start with hey. Same with feminine singular and third feminine plural. They both start with hey. How about the second person pronouns? They all what?
Start with ot.
They all start with ot, exactly. And then we build from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about the first common? What is similar about those?
Start with on.
They both start with aleph and a noon, right? On.
Mm-hmm.
We build from there to make it plural. So to me, this is helpful when I'm trying to memorize things, is to look for the similarities and things that help my brain have to remember less, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have this basic form that we're adding or changing. So the hey for the third person, the ot for the second person, and the on for the first person. And they just get modified from there. So this is one of those charts you might want to print up, and laminate it, put it somewhere, memorize it, make it your home screen on your phone or whatever. Hu, he, ata, at, ani, hain, atem, aten, anachnu.
Nothing. Okay.
So get a little chant going in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. That is that. We'll work our way through the rest of that lesson, but that's the key there. These are subject pronouns. Now we have both the singular and the plural. All right. Any questions on those? Comments?
Could you say the they and you? Could you say them? Go through that list one more time, but say it a little slower.
Yeah. So third masculine plural starting there. Haim. Third feminine plural. Hain. Second masculine plural. Atem. You'll notice the tav has a strong dagesh chazak in it. So very slowly, it's at-tem.
At-tem, okay.
But quickly, just atem. And then second feminine plural is aten.
Aten.
And then the fun one here at the end, first common plural, anachnu. Anachnu. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Questions on that? Any other ones? All right. So we'll work through this a little bit more. But the last thing I want to quickly look at is the reading. So in your textbook, turn to the back and start working from the back the other direction. In Hebrew, of course, that's the front. So you shouldn't really call it the back. It's just the other side. So, of course, this picture is on the quiz. I want to talk a little bit about how the picture is structured so that we get a sense of the meaning behind the picture. So the picture has 4 quadrants to it. So we have the house and the stuff that is related to the house. Then we have the family. The family is next to the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the family all grouped together. And you'll see the family's called the Mishpacha. Mishpacha is a family. Or these can also just be called people, the Adam, the people. Then we have a group of animals there on the right-hand side. These are the Behemah. But we also have 2 animals on the outside of the fence. These are called the Chaya. What's the difference between the Behemah and the Chaya? What do you think?
The Behemah are, I don't know, domesticated or?
Exactly. Domesticated animals are Behemah. Wild animals are Chaya. So the word Chaya, you might recognize that from L'chaim, the Chay Yod and L'chaim, to life. The Chaya are living animals full of life, right? So they're called Chaya. These are wild animals or lively animals. And then the Behemah are the domesticated ones, the ones that are inside the fence. So that's how they are broken down and the kind of the meaning behind the structure here.
So this is so, I'm sorry, this is so elementary, but just to confirm, the Chaya, that under the Yod, that's just a dagesh? That's just a Chaya?
Yeah.
That's
Under
all that
Chaya,
is?
the Yod has a strong dagesh in it.
Okay. And that just means to go, Chaya.
So it means we're going to pronounce it twice. So if we slow down and pronounce it slowly, it'd be Chaya.
Okay.
The
Hi.
goat is
Okay.
pronounced twice or lengthened. If we say it quickly, we're just
I
lengthening.
see. Okay.
Hiya. Hiya.
Okay.
With a strong hiya. It's almost like a karate chop, right? Easy to remember. There's life in my hiya. Okay. Any other questions on the picture here? How it's structured?
Can you say goat?
Goat. Where's my goat?
Is that yel?
Goat. So the guy next to the camel is the goat, and he is called Eights. Eights.
Oh,
The
wait.
goat will eights anything, right? He just eights everything.
Oh, the goat is over there. Yeah, the eights. Okay, I get the eights. What about I'm sorry, ram then? Yel?
The ram.
Ayil.
Good. So the ram is Ayil.
Ayil.
So that's and then the se is the female sheep, the sheep that's next to him. So you notice some of these have feminine and masculine pairs, Sus and Susa, Par and Para.
Mm-hmm.
But the ram and the sheep, the Ayil and Se, they're just different, right? They don't have a masculine and feminine form in the same root. There's two different words there. The Chamor is masculine or feminine. You don't have it two separate words. So that's why we only have one there. Same as the Gamal. We just got one Gamal there.
And then I think on that Quizlet it said yel. Is it like so? It's I know I'm just not sure how Ayil was both goat or ram or sheep. Is that right? Or is ram and sheep? Or wait, is that right?
Yeah.
Or goat and sheep. There was something that was both.
Yeah,
Was it ram and
I'd have
sheep?
to remember. I'd have to see what they say there, because we have two.
Well, maybe that's ram or sheep. That
would
make sense because it's the same animal, right? It's just one male, female, so they would just say it could be either one.
Well, so yeah, a yill could represent any of the sheep that are out there, or it could represent just the masculine one, right? The ram.
Right. Okay, that must be what it was. I can't remember.
I think that's why. I think that's how that's working. So that's a good question. Okay, any other questions? Alrighty. Sorry I didn't have my presentation this week, but hopefully just looking at the textbook was simple enough. So this week is very light on grammar so that we can really solidify our reading. I'm going to spend a lot of time individually this week, tomorrow evening, working with you on your reading. So we make sure we get that solidified and we can move on. I know the first 2 weeks were pretty complex, so this week was a little lighter so that we can just kind of have everything sink in, and then we're going to move on and get a nice steady rhythm moving forward. So with that in mind, I'll let you all go. If you have any other questions, I'll hang out for a little while, but everybody else, you can take off. So we say Toda Rabah, thank you very much, and Lehitraot, we see you later.
Lehitraot. How do I say thank you?
Toda. Toda.
Boda?
Toda.
Toda. Toda.
Your foot.
Say I'm like Toda.
Yep. Toda.
Okay, Toda.
No questions? Anybody questions? You can leave the meeting yourself if you press end meeting. I'll just hang out here.
How do you say the snake? Is it?
Let me pull my snake back up. I don't know why I can never remember snake on the top of my head. Nachash. Nachash.
For the boy, because you said na'ar, right? Na'ar.
Yeah.
But don't they have Bain or right Bain on there as well, like written in the book?
Yeah. So what's the difference between Yelid and Bane, do you think? So he's a boy, but he's also something in relationship to the Ish and the Isha.
Oh, gotcha. He's the son. Okay. So for the quiz, can we put, do you want Na'ar or do you want Bain?
I don't want anything. Whatever you write, whatever you think is good. And you could write all of those. You could write Bane and Yeled, because he's both of those things in this picture. If all I gave you is a picture of just the boy, the best answer would just be Yeled, right? Just boy.
Right.
Because he's next to his parents, we could also write the word for brother or sister. We don't know those words yet, but I mean, he's next to his sister, so you could write that. So really what we're trying to do is get creative. So whatever comes to your mind, write that down.
Okay. And my other question was for home. On the picture, it's this one, right? Up,
Yep.
like the one above the door. That's not door, correct?
Delit is door. Delit is door.
Okay.
The
And then
bayit in the square up above it, the white square, bayit is house
Oh, okay.
or home. So they don't have a separate word like we do house and home. We just have Hebrew is just bayit.
Okay.
So you might recognize the word dalit. That's where the name of the letter dalit comes from, because it almost kind of looks like a door that has swung open. I don't know.
Cool.
Use your imagination a little bit. Bait also comes from bayit, because the bait looks like a little house.
Gotcha.
Cool. Any other questions? You good? Any other questions, Sarah? All right.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yep, Toda. Aaron, did you have any questions? Nope. All right. See ya.